Well, Mary, it's such a pleasure to be able to speak to you because I loved what I saw in Babylon, as many of your other films as well. And I wanted to start off actually. I spoke to Justin Hurwitz last week, and he talked about collaborating with Damien very, very early on in the filmmaking process. So is that the case for you as well as the movie's costume designer?
Yes, we were able to collaborate and get together very early. Now, mind you, it was earlier than maybe it would have been because we did push for a year because of COVID. But even then, the first encounter we had, I read the script for the first time in the spring of 2019, and we met in the fall of 2019 and just started sharing ideas. And we met in person at that meeting. And then we were supposed to start like 4 or 5 months later, and then we had to push because of the pandemic. But we started collaborating very early, and we continue to collaborate all through. We were not technically on the film, but we started gathering the research and visuals and visual ideas, and we did it all digitally and started to create albums for different characters and albums for different sets. And when I say set, obviously it's working with the production designer Florencia, but I also mean like I have mood boards per scene, like for the Wallach party, I had not just one mood board. For the Wallach party, I think I had about 50 to 100 mood boards, because that's how much the visuals that we gathered that were our inspirational springboards were so plentiful that we could paper, like literally like wallpaper our walls in the fitting rooms with our mood boards. And it was really inspiring. And I think really all of that preparatory work that Damien and I did, and all, like I said, all the department heads did, is manifests itself in the visuals of the film. Like, I think it shows we were so on the same page, and we all had this like sort of backdrop of knowledge of how we were going to approach this singular work of his that, just like on your mark, get set, go, once we started filming.
Wow, amazing. And of course,
I have to tell you, it was so cool that Damien and Justin always do their prep. And when we were filming, we filmed to the score often. In fact, the timing, like if you notice, like the camera movement is so much in sync with the score. It's because we had that pre-record, and we would shoot to the pre-record. And talk about inspiring, and just like, you're like in it, it's not like you're in it. It's more than a movie set. It's more magical than the movie set. And in a weird meta way, it's like the movie.
Yeah. Well, it's absolutely incredible. And yeah, the music is amazing. And of course, you have that Voodoo Mama dance scene with Margot Robbie, I think very quickly become iconic, as has obviously the red costume that she's wearing. So did knowing how physical that scene was going to be for Margot really playing heavily into how you approach that design? Because obviously it's a striking look, but it has to be practical as well, I imagine.
It absolutely played into it. It was as big of a part as her character. Like what the dance was, what her movements were, I would say was equal. And so that's why it was sort of a challenging, we did several prototypes because the dance started to develop. Like at first, the dance wasn't exactly like that. And so we started making prototypes in our shop. I had a cutter fitter, Dale Wibben, who was just making Margot's clothes. And then I had other cutter fitters that were making everybody else's clothes, but we just wanted to concentrate on Margot's, and she's, it was a very important change. And plus her entire arc, between her, Brad, Lily, Jean, I build the whole movie around those people. So we started developing prototypes, but as the dance developed, absolutely, like it became clear. And then we knew also that there would be 300 or more background surrounding her, including dancers, very closely. And so then as each puzzle piece made its way into the picture, it became clearer and clearer that there were certain things that the costume had to have, in addition to speaking to her character, which is somebody who she's like wants to make an entrance, but she is not has very little means at the time of that scene. So it has to have this feeling of being a little scrappy, a little cobbled together. And but it was so helpful to have the dance studio, again, was like, I don't know, 20 yards from my office. And so I could pop over there and watch them do it. And they could change, like we would have changes, like, let's try this. And they would come into one of the rooms and change. And it was, honestly, it was like the dream collaboration movie experience on high octane, because it was insane. It was insane.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And I know La La Land is another film. I absolutely adore that movie.
Thank you.
You know, color is so important in that film, you know, with what we see, you know, like Emma Stone's yellow dress, which is also iconic now. So, and I felt like color was very important to this film as well, like Margot Robbie's red dress. So what does your collaboration with the movie's other art departments look like when you're finding that right sort of color palette for a film like this one, would you say, compared to La La Land?
Both times I collaborated heavily with the production designer and with Damien early on. Like La La Land, we did the same thing. We just had our meeting in person. Myself, production design, set decorating, locations, and we went through beat by beat, sort of the color story in each of the movie. And we were plotting like, okay, this is where she might wear this color, and so this is what the set will be. And with Flo and I, we were in discussions about every single set and every single palette. And she had illustrations at that point because, you know, I don't know, it's more modern, I guess, 6 years later. So I had copies of all of her, you know, they just do sort of a fake, that's not a fake, that's the wrong thing. They do a rendition and they print it up. And so it's color. So the colors, sometimes they would attach Pantone. So I knew what, having that knowledge is very important. And also sometimes the costume preceded what the set was. And I would, you know, that, like Flo and I worked in tandem, like, this is, Nellie's wearing this red. I mean, I felt pretty important that it very early on that she should be in red. That felt like the right color for her for that opening number. And so we decided no one else at the party would wear red. And there would be elements of set and set decoration and set design, but very few. But that, so your eye traveled, but that it honed in on Margot. So when he points, you know, Flea's character points on her and he says, it's her for tomorrow. You know, it's kind of what you've been experiencing as the audience, but that collaboration of color, it's very important for Damien. Even on a movie like First Man, which is like, has a more documentary feel, it was a whole different nature, but color and sort of the desaturation of it a little bit, like a faded Kodachrome photograph, it's super important. I think color is a really great way to help tell stories in film. And yeah, he's really, you know, sometimes directors prefer a more muted palette, but Damien is not afraid of color. And I think we utilized it to its fullest to help tell the story of Babylon.
Absolutely. And, you know, mentioning La La Land there, when I think of that movie, I think of the poster with Emma's yellow dress and obviously Ryan Gosling in the white shirt and tie. And as I said, it's iconic. And now that I think that poster of Margot in the red dress, equally iconic. So it must mean a lot for you as a costume designer to have that input and to create these very iconic pieces of imagery that, you know, live on well beyond when the film is released.
It is a question I get asked a lot. And I also get it, I've had it asked to me, like when I've interviewed with different directors, like, how did you do that? How did you know? And the answer is that you don't. Like for me, I never approach it like, oh, this is going to be the iconic look for the movie. I think like you start with this incredibly strong script, La La Land, Babylon, these character arcs are so fully formed and on the page, as is like every description, everything Damien wanted to see in the movie was written in that script. And so if you follow that path and you listen, I mean, he's like my beacon guidepost, you know, like Damien, I trust his instincts. He tells me, he's very communicative and extremely articulate. So he's able to tell what he thinks and what he's visualizing in such a easy way that you just do that. And then it's I think if you try to make it iconic, you're working backwards. And I've never done it that way. Not with The Big Lebowski, not with True Grit, not with La La Land. I mean, there were very specific reasons why she ended up in that yellow dress, and it had nothing to do with that it was going to end up on the poster. But it's like it was right for the scene, and Magic Hour and all the other things that went into it. And so I think that the key, I love it that happens. I love that, like Shigure from No Country for Old Men is a Halloween costume, and The Big Lebowski, the dude, is like one of the most top selling Halloween costumes on Amazon or something crazy like that. And it's pretty cool. But I have never sought, that's never been my goal. It happens after the fact, even with Margot's red ensemble.
Yeah, well, I love to see it happen. And Mary, such a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time. Love to see what you did in this film. Through all your other projects, the one you mentioned, Iron Man, Indiana Jones, could talk to you all day, but we have to wrap. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Have a great day.
You too.